Hello, property nomads. Hope you're well. So, rail users in the UK are going to get the short end of the stick again. Why? Because of a 4.9% increase in rail fares, and that came into force at the start of March. Now, there's a lot of issues with the rail network in the UK. We're very good at some things. We're also not very good at other things, and it's also a situation where it seems like it doesn't matter what you do, you're never going to win. So I will give a bit of a caveat on that. That the challenge that there is at the moment when it comes to tickets and prices, etc., is twofold. Number one, it's very, very difficult to get cheap prices on rail tickets. It's not impossible, but the ticketing system in the UK is very, very convoluted. There are too many ticket choices. It can be very confusing, not just for visitors, but for us as well, for people that live here, because it seems like you need to be an encyclopedia of knowledge. You need to have a master's degree in order to get the right rail fare. Now, the article that I'm going to show you actually has some ways that you can save on your train tickets, but that isn't the purpose of this video. The purpose of this video is to say that it's more misery for rail users, but also we're getting into a stage where it can be quite dangerous for everyone involved. Why is that? Because the more and more you increase the price of something, to a certain extent, if demand and supply are not over elastic, you might find that people might start to not use the railways. And if people don't use the railways because of how the railway network is set up and how tight the margins can be, and also with everything that's gone on in the last 3 or 4 years, with a lot of pay increases for London Underground, Overground, and other train drivers and parts of the rail network, because of a cost of living crisis, because that was brought on by a pandemic, that was brought on by a lot of currency printing and all of the above stuff we've discussed in videos before. With all these rail strikes that have been happening that continue to go on, there's going to be a choke point at some point, because the more strikes there are, the less reliable the railway becomes. And if the railway becomes less reliable, then obviously that's not a good thing. But people that might not be overly familiar with the railway network, now if they're trying to get to a concert in London, or they're trying to get from A to B, and they look at all these different options and they go, right, okay, maybe I could, let's assume this person is not a car driver, but they can drive a car, but they don't have a car of themselves. So let's assume they want to get from A to B, and they look at it and go, right, okay, well, I could get the train, pros and cons. I could get there, okay, maybe I could do that, but hang on a minute, the train ticket price is quite high. Okay, maybe could I get a bus? Could I get a coach? Pros and cons there. Could I even hire a car to get there? I could hire a car, put fuel in the car, and that might still be cheaper than a train ticket. Well, I could fly. But what if I fly from A to B? Does that work out cheaper? Now, there's pros and cons to each of those methods. They're going to be, price is going to be number one, and time as well, because a railway station might drop you off in the center of town, whereas if you get a coach, the coach station might be 10 minutes out of town. All of these sorts of things. The point I'm making is that with all these strikes and the reliability of the railway going down, for a more casual user of the railway, they might then decide not to use the railway to go and do what they want to do. And you're therefore taking people away from the railway. If you're taking people away from the railway, that means your revenue is going to go down. If your revenue goes down, but your costs have increased, because again, with all of these pay increases, etc., so as a company running the railway, your expenses have increased quite considerably. Your revenue's down because less people are using the railway. So how are you then going to combat that? You're then going to combat that through higher prices, because you need to offset that somehow, because you've got shareholders in some cases to consider, and other bits and pieces. Again, the railways run in a very convoluted way in this country. It's good at certain things, but very bad at other things. The point being that they're going to have to increase prices. So who does that then get passed on to? Well, that then gets passed on to those people wishing to use the railway. And this is where you do get this argument of, well, the UK's railway is very expensive to use. And it is in some circumstances. It might not be in other circumstances. So I'm not going to sit and bash the railways, because I love railways. I really do. I am a bit of a train enthusiast. But let's look at the supply and demand and the economics here. That with everything that's going on, with wage increases, etc., and all these strikes, it's decreasing the reliability of the railway, but also increasing the railway's expenditure. And they've got to offset that somehow, and by doing that, they've got to look at the income column, and that means higher prices. Now, because of the way the office dynamics are at the moment and so forth, the leisure industry is becoming more and more important to the rail industry. But again, if people have the option to get from A to B, people might not want to use the railway because of all the strikes, and they don't know that their trains are actually going to run. Who knows? And the leisure industry is where people got to put more emphasis onto it. Let's go to this article anyway, because it has got some very useful bits of information underneath. So, yeah. The headline is actually cheaper train tickets, 5 ways to save cash on the railway. And we will go through that very quickly. But it's under the guise of, again, the rail fares in England have gone up again. And it's very unwelcome for rail passengers, and it goes through everything that we've just seen. So 5 things that you can do actually to get cheaper rail fares. Buy in advance. Now, this is okay if you're going for a specific reason, a specific thing, and you've got very specific times. Sometimes, most of the times, these fares are not flexible. So you want to go from London to York, maybe you're going for a weekend away, and you can book on a particular train at a particular time. 9 times out of 10, you should get quite a cheap ticket. But then if there's any changes to your circumstances, chances are that ticket's not refundable. But buying in advance normally makes railway travel quite good. You can split your fare. Again, there's apps that can do this. There are websites that can do this for you. Split my fare, split train tickets, etc. Again, this is one of those industries where, with all due respect to these apps, they shouldn't really exist, because the ticket network should give you the cheapest ticket anyway. It shouldn't be this convoluted. But splitting your fare, again, there are websites out there that can do that automatically for you. Number 3 is my favourite one, is use a rail card. There are various rail cards out there. Again, the amount of rail cards that are available are too complicated. It should be simplified, but that's a different podcast. That's a different video. But you can use a rail card. Now, a rail card could be normally about £30 for the year. Might sound expensive, but if you're going to be a relatively frequent user of the railways, actually, you'd be surprised how simple it could be to save more than £30. So it's worth the investment, I would argue. Travelling groups, again, this works hand in hand with rail cards, because if you're travelling in a group, you normally can get X amount off a ticket. Normally it's 33%. The group's got to be travelling together, and if you're doing it with a network rail card, that's useful as well. Even if you don't have a network rail card, if your local ticket office actually exists and it's still running, go and chat with people in the ticket office. But normally, if you're travelling in a group of 3 to 9 and you're doing it off peak, you can get a group save fare or a group ticket. Very, very useful. If you've got a network rail card to add to that, great. If not a problem. Go and speak to your ticket office. And the last one that, again, is a different video in itself, is take advantage of flexible commuting. And again, I believe this is where there's a thing called flexible season tickets, and they will allow travel on any 8 days in a 28-day period. And again, there's all sorts of different flexibility bits and bobs there. So there are ways where rail travel can be cheaper. And again, we'll link to the article in here. I would argue that the ticket system shouldn't be so convoluted in the first place, and there should be just this automatic, you get the cheapest ticket regardless of what is going on or where you're flying to and from. But going back, rail fares have increased by 4.9%. It's not going to be welcome news for anyone. And what people are doing when they're striking, they're decreasing the reliability of the railways, and for the more casual leisure user, chances are they're going to be put off from using the railway. And if they're being put off from using the railway, they're going to be using other methods. And as a result of that, that means that rail revenue is probably going to decrease. And that means if that decreases, ticket fares are going to go up probably by even more in the future, because expenses and overheads have increased for companies, and they've got to, again, look after their shareholders. Not all parts of the railway, some are national owned, but if they're run by a private company, they've got shareholders, etc., to consider as well. But yeah, more pain and misery for everyone here in the UK for rail fares. Who knows what will happen? But do check out that article. There are some very practical things on there and practical ways to save rail ticket prices as well. Please do us a very small favor. Please like and subscribe to the YouTube channel. Actually, please do go and do that to the podcast as well, Property Nomads. But we're seeing this channel grow nicely, and we're trying to add as much value as we can: travel, property, economics, everything that's going on at the moment. And it's all thanks to you for listening, to liking, to watching, and for subscribing as well. Thank you. See you in the next video.